A warm welcome to the Game Changer with Joe radio show with host Juanne Williams. Thanks for being here. Please visit us at www.gamechangerwithjoe.com. For additional details, the show is also live streamed using the handle Roch Life on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Periscope. Are you seeking things that set your soul on fire? Is today the day you start your impossible? Remember, you are enough, always. We hope you leave us better than you came.
Welcome, friends, relatives, supporters everywhere from abroad. Before I go any further, I just want to send my deepest thoughts and well wishes to the family members and friends and loved ones of the tragedy in Florida, in Miami. I call Miami my home for more than 10 years. It is a place that holds a very special place in my heart. I have friends there that I hold as dear as my family. And I just want them to know that I'm thinking about them. And when you mark yourself safe, I send up a prayer to heaven. Just know that we are with you, Miami. As promised, we're going to continue on the Lifelong Romance series. And tonight we're going to talk about self-esteem. Our guest, who I will bring on in a moment, is Sarah. She has been with us for the past 2 weeks, and she'll also be with us next week. I can't tell you how happy I am for that. I want you to know it is possible to have a high level of self-confidence and low self-esteem. And sometimes we tend to use the two interchangeably when they mean two different things. So your self-confidence is how you feel about your ability to do something. Yeah? You could be very, very good at dancing, cooking, and just terrified of speaking in public, or you're not very well at maths and stuff like that. Self-esteem is how you feel about yourself, which is totally different than being confident in being able to do something. And they don't always go hand in hand. Sometimes, not all the time, a person who is boasting about a certificate or their education or how much money they make, etc., is often hiding something else very much deeper. It's also an example of somebody who does not have very high self-esteem. They tend to see the world as sometimes a very hostile place. So while confidence means to trust, to have faith in yourself, self-esteem is totally different, okay? Now, we know that in the West, self-esteem is based on achievement, while in the East, it is based on self-worthiness. However, the problem with achievement-based self-esteem, it promotes fear of failure and the pursuit of success at all costs, meaning winning at any and everything. Our achievements are not really 100% within our control, and it's often transient. So we cannot base our self-esteem on our ability to do things. We have to be able to feel good about what's on the inside and not rely on what we could do to make us feel good about ourselves. I hope that makes totally sense. How do you recognize a person with healthy self-esteem? Well, they're able to take risk. They give all their all to a project or an ambition. Even though they might fail at things, it doesn't upset them. It's a learning experience for them. It doesn't diminish how they feel about themselves. They don't rely on their income or their status or anything of that nature to put themselves higher above somebody else. They're very much open to growth, experiences, meaningful relationships, taking risks, etc. Now, since I've given you that, long definition of a person who has healthy self-esteem, it would be good to say that we all do. Unfortunately, we don't. And I don't want the people who might not feel so good about themselves tonight to turn off their brains or their emotions or what have you. If you feel it applies to you, I want you to be open to what we're trying to accomplish tonight, because it's well and good to say that, oh, a person has low self-esteem, but where does that come from? As a person who has studied human behavior, I'm always wanting to explain how things happen. Not that they're happening, we know that they're happening, but how do we change it if we don't understand what brought it forth to begin with? So tonight, what we're going to do is to examine where low self-esteem comes from, how we can shut down the imposter in our brains, and hopefully leave you with some suggestions or some toolkits on what to do if you feel like your self-esteem or the way you feel about yourself needs a boost. Before I bring Sarah on, we know that there are three ways in which low self-esteem is deeply rooted. These are the causes of low self-esteem. Traumatic childhood experiences such as prolonged separation from your parents, if you were neglected, if you were abused emotionally, physically, any of those ways. When you grow up, if you're suffering from ill health, negative life experiences, let's say you got divorced, you lost a job, if you don't feel that you're very good at maintaining relationships, people who also are victims of emotional abuse physically, victims of, if you've ever been discriminated against because of your religion, the way you look, your race, whether you're a man or woman, your sexual orientation, all these things have a very negative effect on self-esteem. And so at this point, I'm going to bring in my lovely and good friend, Sarah. Sarah, tell our listeners good night, please. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Thanks again for having me on, Joanne.
Of course. Welcome. We're lucky and we're very blessed to have you.
Thank you. This is a very interesting topic. Actually,
yes.
One of my favorites with clients and one of the most common, Mm-hmm. It's interesting because self-esteem and confidence is one of the issues that people are prone to admit the least. Mm-hmm. Because it's embarrassing. It's uncomfortable to just get up and tell somebody, you know what? I mean, I may appear how I appear, but I don't really feel that confident about myself. I don't really feel like I'm that great. Only to have people look at you like the alien with 7 heads and be like, what are you talking about right now? So a lot of people are very uncomfortable with even the admission of suffering from low self-esteem and low levels of self-confidence. So I absolutely love this topic. And I love to always tell people that there is a way that this can be shifted, and that first and foremost, we all need to realize that all of us, no matter who we are, all of us at some point have suffered from low self-esteem and low levels of confidence. So I'm completely excited to be talking about this tonight, Joanne.
Thank you very, very much. I'm sure that in your more than a decade of transforming people's lives, like you say, it is very, very common to help people overcome these sometimes self-imposed barriers, and sometimes where it's absolutely something totally out of their control. So I guess what I want to start with is one of the most common ways in which we develop low self-esteem. And we're going to go back, as usual, to our childhood experiences, where a lot of the problems that we experience start. Tell me, in your opinion and in your expertise, how does our experiences in childhood affect how we feel ourselves later on in life?
So it's interesting, Joanne, because in childhood, and I know that commonly people will say, oh, well, first things off, tell me what was your experience with your parents. Is that experience significant? Absolutely, and it really is. But let's be honest, in this day and age, this is the era of information overload. I'd probably dare to say that the outside world has more of an influence on children and teenagers than even their parents. I'm sure that most parents of teenagers would say, oh, are you kidding? I mean, I can vouch for that. So, yes, the parents have a lot to do with it, and that part of it starts very early, from year 0 to about 5, before you really start to get a true sense and notion about what's going on all around you. But the minute that happens, and again, every child is different. Some children start to perceive those things a lot quicker than other children. But the minute a child starts to perceive what's going on in the outside world, they also start to define themselves and their experiences by what they're seeing on the outside. This is why it's so important for parents to also be cautious as to what they allow their kids to see and hear at different points in their lives. A lot of times we think, oh, they're too small, they don't understand. Au contraire, these are absolute sponges that are listening and absorbing absolutely everything that is happening around us. So even in that, I would urge parents to display caution in the kinds of music, the kinds of books, the kinds of, now with the age of internet radio and podcasts, beware of what your kids are listening to in the car. The way that you speak to each other as a couple or within the family dynamic is also significant. And be very cautious as to how the meaning that you as an adult or anyone in a child's environment helps assign value to something that the kid is going through. For example, there's a difference between a little girl playing with her hair. She decides you guys are going to go out and she decides she's going to do her own hair, right? This is very typical for a little girl at some point. It's very different for her crazy mess of a hair where she has one ponytail facing forward and the other one facing to the left. It's very different for you to say, oh my God, you look absolutely terrible. Like, no one does that. Like, I mean, pig styles are so 80s. I mean, who even does that? Where do you even see that? Then saying, well, that's interesting that you came up with that hairstyle, honey. What about this? And if you can then go change it and give her another option, that's very different from coming in and automatically saying, oh my God, no, you look terrible. I mean, what would people think? What would people think if they saw me? They would totally say I was the worst mother in the world if I went out with you like that. It would totally be my fault. This little princess, maybe 3, 5 years old, 6, 7 maybe, and you think she didn't grasp that. But the accumulation of those kinds of experiences definitely do build a paradigm for the child as to what is proper, what is appropriate, and what is considered acceptable. And the minute that whatever they possess does not fit in line with that paradigm, self-esteem levels invariably come down. It's a chipping away at their self-esteem that happens and that begins to occur because they realize that they don't fit the mold. So it's something that as adults, we have to be very cautious of. I've even seen this, for example, Jill, where you have a play date, okay? And sometimes different kids have different personalities. There's always the kid that may be a little bit more shy, a little bit more coy, a little bit more quiet. And there's the kid that from a very early age displays that he's an alpha, totally type A, likes to control things, likes to be in charge, is the leader in the group. That's typically very common to see in groups of children. So if you have a play date, if you take your kids to a play date, and you notice 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, that your kid always comes back crying. Jimmy told me this. You know, your son's name is John. Jimmy said I'm ugly. Jimmy said I'm weak. Jimmy said my hair is weird. Jimmy said I don't have nice clothes. When they start growing, then it becomes, oh, Jim says, you know, I'm chubby, I'm fat. Jim says I can't play basketball well. All of those things, sometimes as adults, we don't realize that they're creating, it's like a ripple effect in our children who then become adults, but those things don't go away. Then you have that same teenage kid who was told he was chubby and couldn't play sports, grow up to think, oh, I could never be an athlete. I could never get a scholarship for school. I mean, I haven't been good at that since I was 10. All my friends used to tell me that. So even in the environment that we allow to be created around our children, we have to be extremely cautious of. Because, again, it's not only the parents that have an effect on a kid's self-esteem. It is the totality of the environment. This is why we commonly say it takes a village to raise a child, right? Don't we commonly say that? Well,
yes.
that means that every person that's part of that village is leaving a little grain of salt in that gullible mind, and that person grows up. But those things, unless they're channeled properly, those ideals don't go away. And this is why you have so many adults walking around suffering from low self-esteem, which many times leads to chronic deep depression.
Yeah.
You never know what people are going through just because of the way that they appear. The way they show up in the world does not mean that that is a direct reflection in all instances of how these people are actually feeling on the inside. So it's definitely a combination of things, though, for sure.
You're absolutely right. You raised so many important and valid points. Let's face it, even if we have a mom and dad in the home, the person who spends the most time with the children is the mom. And you brought up a really good example of the little girl. Now, for some reason, low self-esteem seems to affect girls more than it does boys. That's just the way it is. Not that boys don't have their own issues, yes, they do. The fact remains is personality starts to form around the age of 2. And there's a good chance that kid is most likely around the mom the most, daycare, what have you, nursery. And I can't express how important it is for mothers and dads, but most of mothers, to be so very mindful of what you tell your children and how you act around them. Now, I don't want anybody to take this as any kind of criticism. This is just an observation. This is just from so many studies that have been longitudinal studies over a period of years that has shown that this is generally the way it works. If your daughter sees you in the mirror complaining about, your big hips or your flabby arms or how you don't like this or how you don't like that, that little girl is looking to you for some kind of direction. She's looking at the world to you are the window to the world in her eyes, and whatever you put out, she is going to soak it up like a sponge. And don't be surprised, like you say, if this person, when they go out to school and then they're influenced again by their peers around them, it will be one of those things that will take years to change. How often do you see more women dealing with self-esteem issues versus men in your practice, Sarah?
That's actually a really good question, because I'm going to tell you that it's probably equal. The difference is that men and women manifest it in different ways, but it's the same issue dressed differently. So a lot of times, I'll give you an example. A man, when he wants to be extra dominant, extra domineering, belligerent, even condescending to the women in his life. Maybe there was some trauma, but while he was a child. But in addition to that, when you get to the core of it, a lot of men get to the root of the fact that they are suffering from low self-esteem and low self-confidence. But this is the way that they manifest it, because they must be macho, right? That's what our society says. You're a man up, grow up here. So they don't really have a choice. They don't feel like they have a choice, one, in being able to display what they're feeling, and much less to admit it to a woman. No way. That's not happening at all. So surprisingly, when men actually come and work with a coach and they really put the work in, you can get to those root causes. And you'd be surprised to hear, Joe. I mean, I can tell you that I'd probably say it's an even split. Between men and women with regards to facing this issue. Now, women naturally tend to be a little bit more expressive, and the way they manifest it tends to be in things like they get depressed, they stop wanting to go out, they stop wanting to do things that used to interest them in the past. because they're going through that period, which is the worst part, where everything they do, they also tell themselves that it's wrong, that it's ugly, and that it's not right. A man, on the other hand, will have this period of self-esteem and will try to almost overcompensate because of what society tells him a man should do, with being super tough, super hard, super domineering. Of course, that creates other issues in the home and in their personal relationships and in their career, but that tends to be the way that men manifest it versus women.
What about when you mention that? I thought just came to me, because I know at least one listener would be able to relate to this in terms of relationships, and I'm pretty sure that later on in the program you're going to give us some things to put in our emotional toolbox as it is to help us, make that shift. But in terms of relationships, how does a woman with low self-esteem relate to those around her? For instance, it might be a husband or a sister or a parent. Any examples?
So it almost is the two extremes, Joanne. You have the woman that, because she's suffering from low self-esteem, she will become the ultra criticizer of the group. If her sister cuts her hair, oh, well, I don't know that was the best look for you, sis, but okay. If her sister dyes her hair, it's a problem. If her parents decide to buy a new house, they go and the house is absolutely beautiful. Everybody's raving about it, and they're the ones that go in and they're like, it's nice. And you're looking at them like, what is wrong with you? Then you have the other one, the other extreme, that you almost have to like constantly placate. So let's say you're out to the mall with your girlfriend is trying something on, and she's like, man, this actually is cute on me, don't you think? And she's over there like, yeah, it looks really good on you. I could never wear something like that. Are you kidding me? I'm hideous. I am so fat. I could never wear something like that. You're just so lucky that you can like do those kinds of things and that you look the way that you do. That's why all the guys are after you. I mean, I'd have to beg to get a date these days. So you almost have like the two extremes. There tends to not be a good balance, a good midpoint for women where they can, one, acknowledge that they're going through this, and two, devise a very active plan in order to be able to mitigate that, to get to the point where they're in a better frame of mind.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for that. And very eye-opening, too. All right. So I want to move on a little bit now and talk about the other two ways in which our self-esteem is affected. And I'll just briefly sum up in terms of our health, and I'll let Sarah take the lead on abuse, because I think we would spend a lot more time on abuse than we would on health. Now, when I lived in Miami, I worked in healthcare for about more than 5.5 years. So I have a first-hand knowledge of what happens when people come to the doctor's office and they're not, maybe their body don't work like the way it's supposed to because of age or what have you. But if you think about, your body is failing you, okay, you're no longer able to do the things that you're used to. That makes you you. It takes away from the sense of who you are as a person, and this is something that can actually shake you. We don't really realize how much we rely on our health until it's gone. I've always said the most valuable possession anybody has is their health. Just think about that for a moment. The most valuable possession you have is your health. Now, let's say you're chronically ill, and it forces you to go through a lot of changes, whether or not, you like those changes. I mean, very few of us would, or we come to terms with them. How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile with the fact that, let's say, you were an athlete, you run marathons, you were hiking, and all of a sudden something happens to you when you can no longer do that anymore? Think about how difficult and distressing this would be. And it can even turn into a form of dissonance where you're like, oh, no, it's not happening to me. And if that's not bad enough, where you feel so unsure of yourself, there's also the embarrassment sometimes and the shame, okay, that comes from having to ask people for help? What if you needed to use a wheelchair? What if you had to take medications that made you gain weight? It put you in a really bad mood. What if you always had to tell your family, you know what, I can't go out today, I'm not feeling well, or your spouse invites you on a date night and you're like, I am so sick today, I just want to stay close to home. If you have to ask for help, or you, like I said, you use a wheelchair, it makes you feel weaker than usual. You gain weight or you lose it, it can affect, you have to go spend money on more clothes. It affects your self-image. A whole bunch of scenarios can create a diminished view of ourselves and all sorts of emotional problems. And also, not only does it affect our the way we feel about ourselves, but our relationships. And sometimes, sadly enough, we start to feel that we don't deserve the love that people are showing to us. We feel as if we are a burden to other people, okay? And while that may very well be not the case, it is frustrating to people on the other side who are witnessing it, knowing that they love us, okay? It also affects your job. You might have to stop working, your hobbies, etc. And so that's just a summary of how once your health changes, it affects who you are. You get depressed, you get anxious, you get stressed out, and that leads to mental health decline. That affects how you feel inside. And the third most common way that our self-esteem can take a beating is abuse. Whether it's from your childhood, from your parents, any of those ways, abuse can affect your self-esteem. And I'll just give the floor to Sarah to talk a little bit about this before we move on to the toolkit. Take it away, Sarah.
Indeed, Joe, you brought up some really, really good points. Typically, in patients that have suffered some kind of abuse as children or as adults, they tend to, again, be one of the two extremes in most cases, not in all. They will either become angry and bitter because they haven't channeled those energies and haven't really started their journey towards healing, or they become extremely reclusive. They're hermit crabs, they don't like to go out, they don't have many friends because the world scares them.
Mm-hmm.
After going through a traumatic experience, the outside world becomes extremely scary. You don't feel like you can really trust anyone. So your little bubble, your little nest is the only area where you feel like you're secure. Both extremes, obviously, are not healthy. And again, part of the journey towards healing is to really be able to go through the process and what happened and getting to a healthy point where you accept that it's occurred, you can glean something from it, and you can understand that you deserve to continue your life in the most healthy and productive way. That experience, no matter how bad or hurtful, does not need to damage you and your life permanently in a way that inhibits you from enjoying even the most simple pleasures that are around you.
Mm-hmm. I have an observation, simply because I work with people who have dual diagnoses. And one of the most common things that I see is adults who have suffered from emotional neglect when they were children, meaning that their parents might not have paid them a lot of attention, they didn't hold them or they didn't hug them, a lot. They were very standoffish parents. How might emotional neglect as a child affect us as an adult? Any ideas? Because I'm sure there's somebody out there who have parents like that, And this is not it's not blaming the parents in any way. This was just their circumstance. How might that manifest itself in their lives if they were neglected as a child?
Oh, that's huge. That's huge. And typically the way that you see that most overtly is in the relationship choices that you see them effectuate. So, for example, you'll see the guy that was neglected be attracted to women that are very outgoing, that maybe even domineering and needy, because that sense for neediness that those women display equates to them that they are being paid attention to and that she needs them. And that fills their cup. That fills their cup. It's the same thing happens for women. Sometimes you may have a friend and you're like, wow, your boyfriend is really possessive, or your husband is really possessive, and you're looking at it from the outside in and you're just not understanding. That may be a friend of yours that suffered from that as a child, where she was emotionally neglected. So now what on the outside looks like somebody who is possessive and jealous, to her means, oh, he wants me. Because she didn't feel that sense of want as a child. So any way that she gets that as an adult, even if it's unhealthy, she doesn't really know the difference. And unfortunately, those are the instances in which they may go too far by the time that these individuals really kind of are shaken and they see what's right in front of them. It can be a sad situation, but it happens a lot more often than we think. In careers, you tend to want to have positions of power. Because when you have a position of power, people need to defer to you. So now you become a priority. You weren't a priority growing up. So you tend to place yourself in positions where you have the say and you are at the top of the food chain. It makes you feel whole. It makes you feel good. It makes you feel wanted. Those are the ways in which those can manifest, and those are probably some of the most common ways in which they do manifest across the spectrum.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for giving us a better idea of, when or how our circumstances affects how we behave later on. And, sometimes we might have somebody at work, they're so difficult, or you're like, oh my goodness, But I like what you said earlier. Everybody has that some kind of struggle. And I like to think everybody's fighting some kind of battle, and even though sometimes it might be hard to love them, they're the ones that need the love more so than usual. I've also have clients who have also been rejected or abandoned by their parents, meaning that, instead of raising them as parents should, they're with the grandma or they're with the neighbor, or, they're passed off to somebody else. Or the parents are like, can't you see I'm busy? Go watch TV or go away. Don't bother me. These kinds of words, on a young mind, tells the child, oh, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy of any kind of love, And so when they reach to adults now, that affects their confidence and their self-esteem, also, by other factors. But no matter what may have led to our self-esteem being low, or it might have been trodden upon, or you just don't feel good about yourself, the good thing is there is hope. There are things that you can do to start right now to change the way the game has been played for you all your life. If it seems impossible that you can't feel good about yourself, if it seems as if no matter, where you turn, you just can't seem to get over the fact that you're worthy of every good thing that's coming into you, Sarah and I have some suggestions on how you can go about making that shift. And I'd like to bring in Sarah at this point to give us some ideas on how we can begin to make that shift, regardless of where we find ourselves today. Any help?
Absolutely, Joe. I would say first and foremost that people that are suffering from low self-esteem need to understand that it's not an isolated incident. A lot of times what makes these situations feel internally worse is that you think you're the only one going through it. You think that every woman thinks that every other woman is just walking down the street in her heels with her strut, with no care in the world. And every guy that's suffering from it sees every guy walking down, the alley with his suit, like he's the most confident Joe in town. And all the girls are looking back at him like, wow, he is what time it is. And nobody's giving him that reaction. That is so false, people. Everybody goes through this. Everyone at some point in their life goes through this. Therefore, understand that it is such a common occurrence, and understand that it can go away as well. There are certain periods in our life, everything is a pendulum, So there are periods in our lives where, because of what we're going through at the moment, that instance may naturally affect your low self-esteem. If you're going through a divorce, most people will have a period of low self-esteem and maybe even depression. This, again, is typical given the circumstances. Now, if you are starting to see that you're becoming chronic and you take a step back and say, well, wait a minute, what is it that I really have in my life that would cause me to have low self-esteem or low levels of confidence? And you're like, well, I mean, if I have to be honest with myself, I'm good right now. I have health. I'm okay financially. I know that I'm loved by the people in my environment. Then this may be another issue. For example, you may be suffering from chronic depression, for which I urge you to seek the proper medical assistance for. But otherwise, understand that you have the choice as to how long it stays present in your life and what you will do about it. So whereas I won't be the one to tell you, oh, no, nobody goes through it, and if you have it, then you have a problem and you need to work on it. That is not the case. But I will say this. When you are experiencing low self-esteem and low self-confidence, think of why it is that you don't deserve to feel differently. Because at the core of it, that's what it is. If you think about it, the core of it is this intrinsic sense and feeling that you don't deserve better. Why? I challenge you. Why? What makes the person next to you better than you and therefore more deserving of what you think you don't have or what you think you don't possess? And typically, if you sit down for a couple of minutes to meditate on that, you'll realize that there is nothing. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We have the same needs. We have typically the same reactions to many things. We are the same, dressed differently, in a different costume, but we are all the same. And we are as complicated as we are simple. So think to yourself, why am I not deserving of this? Why? And you'll quickly realize there's nothing there. There's nothing that makes you different from the next person. You deserve, without knowing our listeners personally, I can tell each and every one that you absolutely deserve to have a plentiful life where you are happy and are fulfilled. No one and nothing should have the right to take that away from you. Even in instances where apparently to other people, they may say, oh, that's kind of a bad type of situation that Sarah's in. The way that you choose to handle it and react to it will be the determining factor as to whether that is going to tear you down or make you better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I particularly like the fact that you said that, we all deserve to live a full life. We deserve pretty much every good thing. And if there is something or someone or a circumstance that is making you feel differently, then it's time to examine where these feelings are coming from and what you can do to change, what you can do to look at yourself differently. Once you've identified whether it's temporary, it's just happening, like a divorce or what have you, or it's long-term, something in your past which is contributing to how you feel about yourself. Like Sarah said, there is hope and help available. There are many things that you can do to change how you feel. How important it is. I don't see a lot of people sometimes acknowledging their strengths. We will often hear people moan about how they're not good at this or they're not good at that. They're looking at their glass a little bit half empty, and they will always point out, if I ask them, so tell me, what are some of the things that you love? It will take them a long time to get around to telling me something about themselves that they love. And I find that a good indicator of where you are about how you feel. So how important it is that we acknowledge our strengths. How important do you think that is?
It's extremely important. As a matter of fact, we'd be a very different society with respect to self-esteem and confidence if we dedicated the same amount of energy on what our strengths are as the amount of energy that we dedicate on what our weaknesses are. A lot of times you'll hear people, even when they're experiencing some kind of blessing, they got an award, they got a new job, and you get a new job, and everyone is like, oh my goodness, this is so exciting, we're so happy for you. The person says, yeah, I hope that temper of mine doesn't come through. I hope somebody doesn't report me within the first 3 months. I mean, why is it that we can't even give ourselves a solid 5 minutes to bathe in our glory? Mm-hmm. Like, we even take that away from ourselves. Mm-hmm. Something good is happening to you, and instead of you saying, wow, I really worked hard for that, and it was a journey. It took everything out of me, but I'm really happy that I made it, and I am looking forward to this new challenge. You want to tell yourself that, oh, let me tell you, she asked me this one question during the interview, and boy, that boiled my blood. I almost lost it. I got to watch myself because sometimes I can get out of line. Mm-hmm. Or you have the wife that gets a gift from her husband, a random gift, and instead of thinking, wow, that was really, really nice, like I really appreciate that he went out of his way to do that, it's automatically, this is nice, but I wonder what he wants from me. This must mean he wants me.
Yeah.
Really? Do we need to think that deeply into it? Because even if that was the case, you automatically took away all the shining lights surrounding the gift. So tell me, then what husband would want to continue giving gifts if that's the kind of response he's getting from his wife? Oh, these shoes are nice. I guess I'm going to have to pay for it later. What does that even mean? You know what I mean? What does that even mean? And how is that productive for you or for him? Who wants to hear that as a husband? And more than that, why are you taking that away from yourself? You should absolutely be excited and know that you deserve to get a gift, a random gift, just because it's Tuesday evening from your husband, and he actually went out of his way to demonstrate his love for you.
I absolutely love that. While you were talking about gift giving, it reminded me of a time in my life not too long ago where I used to say, man, I'm lucky. That's a lucky thing that happened to me. And then I had to change my thinking. Not everything good that happens to me is because of a lucky break. It could be, and it's not just about me, not everything that happens to you is because it's a lucky break. It sometimes is because you've worked hard. You are legitimately talented. Otherwise, you wouldn't be where you are today, And sometimes it is important for us to write down our accomplishments and our strengths and to look over that list very regularly, especially on the days where you just don't have anything left to give. You might need to pull out that list every once in a while and take a look and remind yourself that, hey, these are my strengths, okay? And they can help you chip away at whatever belief you have that for some reason you don't deserve that gift from your husband, or that you're not good enough, or you can't be successful. Acknowledge your strengths, celebrate them, pay homage to them, give them the respect that should be afforded to them. Before we wrap up the discussion tonight, I wanted to know if there are any when a client comes to you, Sarah, in terms of and they want to improve how they feel about themselves, is there any challenge that you give them to go away and practice and then come back to let you know how it went?
Absolutely. I typically will have my clients, as the first order of things, go back and in their moments of solitude while they're alone in a quiet and restful place, actually sit and write down everything that makes them special. From the little to the big things. Absolutely everything that makes them special. Anything from, I have really nice hair, to, I can be really generous at times. Whatever they define as something that makes them special, I have them think about that and write it down. It's very, very important to write things down. That's extremely, extremely vital. And then I have them put it in a place where they see it every day. Some of my clients like to put it at work on their desk. Some of my clients like to tack it onto the refrigerator. I remember having a client that used to write with lipstick on her mirror in the evenings and then would go to sleep. She would write something like, "You are absolutely the most generous person I've ever met." And she would write it in the evening, go to sleep, so that when she woke up and was, half with her eyes half closed, going to the bathroom first thing in the morning, that was the first thing she saw. And it would automatically just lift her up and brighten her up for the day. It was just a great way to start the day in general. So absolutely, that's first and foremost what you should do. I also encourage people to seek the assistance of those around them that they really feel are genuine and have their best interests at heart, and ask them what they think makes them special. A lot of times we underplay ourselves, and it's the people around us that can really say, no, you're absolutely like A, B, C, and D. And a lot of times it's things that we're like, I don't think I ever put on to that. I never paid attention to that. Of course, we're too busy picking up on what we're not doing right. It's other people around us that have our best interests at heart that many a times can tell us, no, you have always displayed this. I've always loved this quality about you. If it's one thing that I would love to imitate about you, it would be this. So that's another really useful tool that I have, and it's kind of homework, if you will, that I have my clients go through when they're having these issues.
Absolutely fabulous. I absolutely love that, because I was jotting down some things that I've done in the past, and things that I can give people in their emotional toolkits, quote unquote. And the ones that you listed about, writing down things that are good about themselves and enlisting the help of others are at my top 3, just so you know. So great minds think alike. Before we, I know, thank you. Before we go tonight, please remind our listeners how they can get in touch with you and any final words of advice for them, Sarah.
Absolutely. To all our listeners out there, please reach out to me at 305-914-6599. You can also check me out on my website at www.svelitecoaching.com, and also find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SV Elite Coaching. And one last thing to tell all our listeners. Like I mentioned before, if you get nothing else from this conversation, just remember this. You are worth it. Just those 4 words. You are worth it! Exclamation point. And I'll leave you all with that.
All right. Thank you, my love. Thank you so very much. I enjoy having Sarah on the program every week. It's been an absolute eye-opener, and we'll be able to work with somebody who think pretty much along the same lines that you do and who have the same ideas. It's just been a breath of fresh air. So thank you so much, Sarah. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me again. I'm looking forward to joining you guys again. Bye, everyone.
You're welcome. Have a good night. Before we finish up tonight, we're going to take a short break, and then we will come back with a special guest who's holding a very, very massive and special expo coming up here in New York City. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll be right back.
I could see the smoke covering their eyes. I could see the devil coming in disguise. Try to deceive, just like Eve, turning the truth into a lie, telling her if she eats, she won't die. Lie. You've been blinded by the money, say you live in life, walking around with a heart that is full of pride. But you can't buy your way to heaven, though. This ain't Wall Street, your stacks ain't valid, bro. Entrance is free, you gotta believe. Choose life over death, there'll be no regrets. I shall not die, but live to declare the words of God.
Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you very much. You were listening there to an original song from my cousin Eldon Morris. He is a gospel artist in St. Vincent, my home country, and I look forward to having more of his music again in the future. We're going to bring on our very, very special guest. Victoria, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you, my darling? Thank you very much for waiting. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to talking to everyone about my expo that's coming up, Got Curl Expo.
Yes, ma'am. Victoria also hails from New York, which we both live in the same state, and she has worked incredibly hard to put on a Curl Expo. Get right into it. Tell us what it's about, why you decided to do it, how we can attend, where we can get tickets. Carry on.
Oh, sure. So, as everyone knows, it's huge right now. Everyone's going vegan. Everyone's letting their hair go natural or transitioning from relaxed to natural. We're all getting back to our roots. We're getting back to the basics. So a lot of my friends, were either transitioning from relaxed hair or just really trying to work on the texture of their natural hair. So we would have these group conversations, and it would get tiresome sometimes because, everyone was trying all these different products. We didn't know what to try because we didn't really have that experience with, what to do. So I said to myself, I can't go into the city all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't always just go to Target, which is amazing. They have an excellent selection. But I can't always go to Target and try something every week. So I said, you know what? Why don't I try and get a bunch of vendors and manufacturers all in one place and see what happens? And the response has been amazing. Amazing. On Facebook, you can find us at Got Curl Expo 18. On Instagram, Got Curl Expo. The website is www.2018.curlexpo.weebly.com. Any other questions? You could go for it. I mean, I'm just like so excited. I'm gonna explode.
Where is this going to be held? Where in New York is this expo? When is it going to be held?
So it's going to be on March 31st from 10 to 3 p.m. at the Holiday Inn Express, and that's in Plainview, New York. It's very convenient, right off of the 495 highway in Long Island. If you're coming from Brooklyn, 25 minutes tops. Coming from Queens, 15 to 20 minutes. It's very convenient for anyone coming from, the tri-state area.
Awesome sauce. And you're going to have, I assume, a lot of vendors there. There's going to be products there that we can sample and we can buy.
Absolutely. We have some, of course, we had to have those big sponsors, Miss Jessie's, the original curly hair, like grandmother of natural hair products, sent us a huge box. I wish I could take pictures and show everyone the boxes I have in my office. It's amazing. Eden Body Works sent me cases of samples to pass out. Palmer's, I just couldn't even believe. I said, this isn't Palmer's. Palmer's is known for their cocoa butter. Sent me a case of samples of some of their newest products for our attendees to try. That's just to name a few.
Wow. It sounds as if it is going to be an event to remember. And like you said, especially for African-American women, a lot of us are getting tired of the relaxer and the braids and what have you. And in a day and age where we just want to get up and go, literally, this is something that if they're even interested in transitioning, or if they're in the process or they've already transitioned, this would be the expo to go to. And I hope that it's a massive success, and this is just the first of like many, many, many years to come, because you've worked so hard and you're deserving of every success that comes from this event.
Oh, thank you so much. And I have to mention that we have, the main focus is the hair, right? But we have natural shea butters, that will be there. We have natural vegan foods. There's a couple of vendors who are vegan foods, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't taste good. This is vegan soul food. We're going to have a bunch of skincare vendors, everything, all natural, homemade, local vendors that will be there.
Awesome. What I will do, since we have a couple of weeks before the actual event, in my next 2 weeks leading up to the show, I will announce it again and remind listeners to head on out there to give you the support that you need. Any final words for our listeners, Victoria?
I'm so happy that I took the leap and I really, made this thing happen. It's definitely going to be an annual event. And there's some other opportunities that have opened up, so this is not going to be the last you hear of Got Curl from Victoria.
Oh, we look forward to it, my darling. Thank you so much for being here. Again, I will remind the listeners in the next couple of weeks. You're very welcome anytime. I will remind our listeners again in the next couple of weeks to come out and support, okay? Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being patient.
Oh, thank you. And I look forward to speaking to you again and expanding this whole brand.
Of course. Me too. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Bye-bye. Well, my listeners, you've heard from Victoria. I know how hard she's worked on getting this expo together. It's going to be the first big one. And so just if you're able to, an hour, 2 hours, whatever, if you don't live in the area, you can't make it, tell your friends to go and make it. I believe in giving back and supporting. To round up tonight's show, I just want to point out a few other things that you could do to improve your self-esteem. Things like addressing your self-doubt, giving yourself permission to accept compliments gracefully, ensuring that you are taking care of yourself, your mind, body, and your spirit, setting a challenge that you know you could complete, being nice to people, and not just being nice to them in words, but also in thoughts and in actions. Spend more time with the people that you love. If there's somebody in your life that is not treating you well, maybe it's time to think about distancing yourself from them. Make sure that you take care of yourself. I want to thank all my guests and my listeners for being here tonight. I appreciate that your time is an investment, and I hope that you are leaving us tonight a lot better than you came. Remember, you're worthy, you are loved, and you deserve to live a very full life. Until next week, take care of yourself and each other. Good night.